Good evening, this is Derek Dykstra. I am your student's math teacher for this year, and I just wanted to go over a couple quick things that we have for our beginning of classes, and just some philosophy, some information for you, how we're going to run the class, what some of the students will be doing in the class, and so forth. As a parent, I always like to know, what are my kids going to be doing in that class? How will they be learning, and how will I know that they're going to be learning the material? So let's get started. First of all, we start off with that this is a very student-centered classroom, okay? We'll walk around the room in a minute and you'll see that not everything is done up on the board. Everything that we're going to do in the class is built with students learning and thinking, okay? So we've adopted a couple different ideas for us here this year with the fact that we want to look at inquiry as a lesson module, right? If we're having students think and inquire and discover some of the things that they're interested in about the mathematics, then that helps drive it. It helps them gain some ownership in that process. Also, we want them thinking. A lot of times students just do the work and they don't really think too much about it. But in this case, we want them thinking about it, right? And that helps. And then also, how do they demonstrate what they've learned? So inquiry, thinking, and demonstration. So that's our big thing. And also, we want them to show grit. As you know, tigers, we are part of Growl, and to show the tiger way, we want to show our grit, and that's that perseverance, right? To make sure that all students want to learn and succeed, and that we can help them, right? We base it on two different concepts. One concept is the book called Building Thinking Classrooms, and this is something that the math department has been studying this past summer and before, and so in this book, there's a ton of material about how to get students to think in a classroom. And a lot of that just extends from not sitting and taking notes all day, but actually getting up and doing the work. And we'll look at that in a few minutes. And the other thing is inquiry mindset, right? We want students to ask questions. And we also want to be able to have the students, after they ask a question, feel like they're getting feedback from the teacher and or from peers that they are in a good situation, right? That they feel comfortable and confident in how they can ask questions. We also want to make sure that as we're going about the lesson, what kinds of questions am I asking, right? Am I asking just yes or no questions, or simply basic answer questions, or am I challenging them to think and to grow their mindset, right? So that's something we'll be looking at too. So let's get into a little bit more. The Thomas Unified School District has had for a long time this cycle of continuous learning, and I think that's something we'll adopt in a big way in our classroom. And then there's that plan, act, monitor, and adjust, right? So let's look at each of those individually and just see what they look like. In the planning phase, this is where we'll be discovering things. We'll ask the students to get their discovery out and to process. We'll look at strategies. And in the videos they're going to watch at night, they will look at some of the different strategies and what applications they need to solve the problems. And what are the different tools that are available to them. We want to make sure they have as many tools in their pocket as possible. Okay? Then we looked at the action. What are we doing in the class, right? This is putting pencil to paper. Whiteboard, pen to whiteboard, right? This is where we're drawing and thinking and writing ideas down. We're collaborating with other students. We're calculating things, right? With math, we have to calculate some things. And then whether we're using mental math or a calculator, we want to improve on those. We also need to read and write. And that's super important because as we look at the literacy from our student perspective, we want to be able to have students read the information and then understand what the driver words or the words that are significant in that statement to know what they're going to do. And this will be important for a lot of classes. And then we want them to demonstrate. How do they demonstrate what they know, what their knowledge is? Finally, we monitor. Now that's a big part of what I do, as well as the students themselves. And it's interesting, we'll be having them fill out this objective and analysis from their homework and other classwork, and it asks them to be self-aware and for them to understand or to verify and show us what their understanding of last night's homework was. Okay? So they'll be doing a lot of self-diagnosis there. Receiving guidance, right? As we guide them in the process, whether it's through a peer or myself, we look at that, and that's a monitoring tool. Reflection, we talked about self-reflection. We talked about reflecting on what their knowledge is and what they're being able to do. And really understanding what their points of confusion are, right? As soon as you know what your points of confusion are, then you can start to really identify where the student's needs are and go from there. And finally, after we do that, we make the adjustments, right? How do we get the student to get back on track if they have a shortfall or so forth? So we reorganize a little bit. We make modifications. Now maybe they're excelling and they really get the idea, and so we need to modify and move up the rigor, okay? We also need to rethink, oh, I thought this was the right way to do it, but I was, I misunderstood. And then that adjustments are based on feedback. So if we provide students relevant feedback, then they're going to be much more engaged in what they're doing. Okay, so let's look at the next phase, which is this inquiry, thinking, and demonstrating, right? So inquiry, what is that? That's depth of knowledge, okay? You can get this flyer off the internet, and it talks about the DOK, or the depth of knowledge levels. And they're just different ways of asking questions in order to get that rigor increased, or where we're just slowly bringing up the students' confidence levels in what they can answer. It's really about the where, what, when, why, and how of the math, okay? What are we doing? Where are we going to do it? When and how? How do we perform that mathematics? And then inquiry is really about clarity. And that's super important because we want to make sure that the student has clarity before we move on. Do I really understand that? Yes, I do. Great. I'm on board, ready to go. From inquiry, we get thinking, right? We look at curiosity. Ooh, what do we have to do here? What do we do there? Right? That's important. We also get retention. Now, in the classroom, we'll talk about the retention rates. And some students have a really good retention rate, and some students is not. I don't really have a great retention. If you've ever met somebody, sometimes you meet them and you talk to them and you get their name, and then all of a sudden it's like, 2 seconds later you forget their name. So we're looking at the retention level as well for students. And that growth mindset. We want the students to be able to grow and improve in things. And if they do seem like they're struggling and need support, then we support them and we move them all together. Finally, the demonstrating, right? When are we demonstrating and how? We're looking at artifacts. Artifacts include pieces of work that they've done, whether through projects or homework or something like that. Evidence. What is the evidence? Now, evidence can be in the form of verbal. So if I'm asking students questions and they're really giving me some good answers back and they seem to understand the process, then that's good. Or visual. I can see them from across the room and I can see what they're doing. Then, so let's talk about the do's and the needs of our class. All right, so the do's and the needs. I know you're probably, what are that? So this classroom is run a little bit differently than most traditional classrooms. I ask the students to watch the video at home. I have video presentations that they'll be watching, as well as other mathematicians that will provide a video about the subject material. Studies have shown that if a student goes home and does homework, say they list a line of problems, maybe 10 problems at home or more, then they're not as apt to do as many of those because they don't understand it all the way. I remember sitting at my kitchen table when I was a kid trying to figure out math. My parents were both working, and what I had to do is I had to figure it out on my own. Well, as you know, you get to about problem 3 or 4, your buddy calls you up and says, hey, let's go do this, and you're out the door, right? So we want them to just get a basic information of what the topic is about and then spend time in the classroom. So take focus notes, right? While they're watching the video. They're usually about 10 minutes long or so, just like this video, and we want to make sure that they take action on that. Do the activity. So if there's a follow-up activity, maybe there's a couple questions to just reinforce what they've learned, then that's a good way to do it. And finally, just review the information. So maybe a 20-30 minute endeavor each night, and it's not super difficult to go through all this stuff, right? We're not asking them to solve major problems or do anything like that. Watch the material, get some bearing on it and what's going on, and then the next day, make sure you bring your fully charged notebook, because we will be briefly reviewing the previous night's material, and then we will be collaborating with peers and work at whiteboard stations. One of the things that the Building Thinking Classrooms model discusses is that We need students to get up and walk around and think in groups. And having that peer support helps them tremendously. You're not just sitting at a desk, like I said, writing notes, looking up, and then going home with practice problems. We're doing the practice problems in the classroom, which makes a huge difference in my opinion and the research that I've viewed. Then we practice with support from me, the teacher, and peers. Okay, so that's a great way to do things. And we're looking forward to a great year. Let me just show you what the class looks like. What the class looks like around here so that you can see what basically we'll be doing. As I walk around the classroom, you'll notice that we have these various whiteboards on the wall. This is where the students will be getting up and doing the work. I've tried to make this room nice and a cool mode for them to help them when come into math and enjoy the mathematics and go through some work together as we go around. And I will encourage them and continue to encourage them as I get closer here to make sure that they are asking questions, that I'm inquiry minded, that I am helping them show that grit and responsibility to make sure that they are getting the work done before they come to school, to be prepared and be ready, and then ultimately be here in class, work together, solve problems, like just get into the math. So I'm looking forward to a great year. I hope you are too. Please, if you have any questions, reach out to me. You can reach me at the school through email, or I'll send you my phone number if you need. But we will look forward to a great year, and thank you very much. And remember, go Tigers, growl!